Welcome to another edition of The Public Interest. My name is David Granger, and on this series of programs, we examine issues of interest to Guyanese at home and in the diaspora. And at present, the issue that is most important is the question of Guyana's territoriality, the fact that we inherited a certain territory, over 214,000 square kilometers from our parents, and we have an obligation to pass it on to our children. But from the time of independence, even back before independence, that territory, our homeland, our dear Guyana, has been under threat by Venezuela. And in December last year, we experienced, I would think, it was quite a misadventure. It was almost catastrophic, in which the Guyana government was engaged by the Venezuelan government. So on this program, we want to examine the misadventure at Argyle Airport. I think many of you could remember seeing, over a dozen very senior officials and heads of government crammed into a little room. Well, perhaps it's better it didn't happen. And when you look at the exuberant reaction of the Venezuelan hierarchy, Venezuelan officialdom, to that encounter at Argyle Airport, you can start to understand why it went so well for Venezuela and why it went so badly for Guyana. And it is not a matter of, high diplomacy or international relations. This concerns all of us. This concerns the future of our country. And we have an interest in making sure that the territorial matters are competently managed. And over the years, we have set traditions and we have adopted positions. And those positions right now are on the verge of bearing fruit, and we don't want to jeopardize our future. Venezuela was exuberant after Argyle, after that encounter at the airport. The Venezuelan president boasted, we did it. I think in Spanish it's called lo logramos, which means we were successful. The Venezuelan vice president said, Guyana must sit down to negotiate. She was boastful too, that this is a big achievement, to force Guyana to negotiate face to face. That's what she said. And then the Minister of Defense, he bragged that the Venezuelan armed forces resolved to remain at present, maintain its presence in the territorial controversy over their Essequibo, what they now call Guyana Essequiba, to ensure that it ends in a practical and satisfactory solution, which means that they don't feel that it has reached a situation or a stage of a practical solutions yet. So these boasts by the president and vice president and minister of defense of Venezuela explain that their objective all along, their strategic objective, was to shift the controversy from the desk of the United Nations Secretary General and the International Court of Justice. They've now shifted to Argyle Airport. This is a tragedy which, if it wasn't so serious, you would laugh because you think it's something preposterous. How did Venezuela manage to bring that off? The process was laid down. It was being followed in The Hague, in the United Nations. And now, within a few hours, the process has been shifted to an airport VIP lounge. When you look at Venezuela's behavior over the last 58 years, what do you think, fellow Guyanese? What is your conclusion? We all know that in the very year of independence, and we're now celebrating our independence anniversary, but in the very year of independence, Venezuela seized Ankoko Island, and now they're developing Ankoko Island. In 1962, even before independence, Venezuela had started aggressive action. In 1968, Venezuela issued a decree off of the coast of what is now the the Pomeroon-Supernam region and the Brimo-Waini region, claiming the sea space since 1968. It's called the Leone Decree number 1152. In May 2015, when I became president, on the 26th of May, Venezuela chooses its dates, with historical precision. When I became president in May 2015, on 26th of May, Venezuela issued another decree, 1787. And then up to 2021, a mere 3 years ago, Venezuela issued another decree, number 4415. All of these decrees are claiming Guyana's land and sea space. They're not tickled, they're not frivolous. These are instructions, pseudo-legal instructions given to the Venezuelan armed forces to protect that territory and that sea space. So this sort of authorizes Venezuelan government and armed forces to act aggressively against Guyana, and that is the real threat to peace. The decrees are like a bone in our throats, and we have not been able to get those decrees off the table. So what are we going to talk about? These decrees have never been rescinded. These decrees have never been repudiated, no matter who is the president. And we now have a situation in which we're going to talk about what? How are we going to talk about removing the threat to peace when the threat to peace is based on the very decrees which Venezuela has been promulgating since 1968? And those decrees are still in force. From 1968, the Leone Decree, up to 2021 under Maduro. He is a major issuer of decrees. Under my presidency, Guyana was obliged to take this matter, or to seek to take this matter out of the hands of the so-called bilateral negotiations which were taking place. And I personally met the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and then United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And eventually, because of Guyana's efforts, we were able to have the matter placed firmly before the ICJ for the first time in more than half a century. So we have triggered proceedings in the International Court of Justice. And up to quite recently, in last year, ICJ ruled that it had jurisdiction. Venezuelan objections increased in intensity after May 2015, not only because the APNUFC was in office, but because petroleum was discovered. So it was a very tense time for us all. And sometimes people don't remember what it was like in May 2015 when Venezuelans had begun to threaten Guyana all over again. So now we are at a situation in which the International Court of Justice says it has jurisdiction, and we are abiding by that process. The matter is in court. What are we going to talk about? The court has not ruled. ICJ said it has jurisdiction about the Venezuelan claims, which we feel are spurious. We know that the matter was settled definitively and legally in 1899. That is, 125 years ago. And the court, as late as December 2020, ordered Venezuela, and let me quote verbatim, to refrain from taking any action which would modify the situation that currently prevails in the territory in dispute. Let us come back to Argyles. what happened at Argyles? The presidents of Guyana and Venezuela met at the Argyles airport, but it wasn't a simple bilateral meeting between two presidents. It seemed like some sort of, mass meeting. You had people from the CARICOM, you had people from CELAC, you had people from the United Nations. That is not a setting for serious discussions on the matters which have been affecting Guyana for over 58 years. It was perhaps very dramatic to have all of these persons in a small room. But what could the outcome be? What was the agenda? Why did Guyana go into this meeting? And what did it expect to take away from the meeting? In my view, there were many issues that Guyana could have put on the table, such as the withdrawal of those offensive decrees from 1968 to 2021. And at the end of the meeting, the decrees were still on the table. That is to say, the Venezuelan armed forces were still mandated by their government to enforce Venezuelan jurisdiction on territory which has been Guyana's territory from time immemorial. So there's a problem by having all of these people at the meeting. No meeting that size, no meeting so briefly convened could be expected to seriously deliberate on matters which are 125 years old and matters which have been definitively defined and determined. Much less could they understand Venezuelans' attitude to Guyana over the last 58 years. So what were they expected to contribute? Are they mere onlookers? Are they observers? Did they have briefs about this territorial controversy? Did they understand the issues? Does the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines understand the issues facing Guyana on a day-to-day basis at Baramita, at Parima, at Waramadang, at Whitewater? Does he understand the problems we have faced for 58 years? And who made him an interlocutor? Who made him an honest broker? Maybe a broker. What qualifies him to sit in judgment or to arrange any meeting at all? My friends, it's a serious matter. Now, what is the outcome of the Argyles meeting? They published something called the Declaration of Argyles for Dialogue and Peace between Guyana and Venezuela. Maybe we should have reworded it, the Declaration of Argyles to prevent Venezuela from terrorizing Guyana. That is what the official communication stated. Guyana is not a threat to Venezuela. Let me look at some of the clauses in this dialogue, in this declaration. The declaration committed the two sides, that is Guyana and Venezuela, to desist from threatening or using force against one another. This is a joke. Guyana has never used force against Venezuela. To continue dialogue on matters of mutual importance. We've been doing that for 58 years. To pursue good neighborliness, we've tried. To pursue peaceful coexistence and unity in Latin America and the Caribbean. To establish a joint commission, yes, another commission. Well, you know where that's going to go. A joint commission of foreign ministers of Guyana and Venezuela. We don't need to go to Argyles for the foreign ministers to speak to each other and to submit a report in every 3 months. No, we've created another layer of bureaucracy. Instead of going simply to the UN or the ICJ, we now have a joint commission which has now got to submit reports, and we'll be dealing with matters arising, and we'll be dealing with another agenda. So we have to meet in Brazil. And we did meet and we reported. So where this process is going to go, when so many other processes have never succeeded, no one knows. No one could say for sure. Well, the Joint Commission did meet, and perhaps we should all be grateful to President Lula da Silva for removing the process from the Argyle Airport in St. Vincent and putting it in a setting, a diplomatic setting, an international setting, where serious deliberations could take place without the cast of thousands, without all these observers and spectators and cheerleaders. So the setting in, Itamaraty, as the Brazilian Foreign Ministry building is called, was much more conducive to serious deliberation and decision-making. So it met in January 2024, that is about a month after the meeting, the disastrous meeting at Argyle. My friends, before Argyle, Venezuela concocted a crisis. I say concocted a crisis because the whole thing was stage managed. The meeting in Argyle took place on the 14th, but by the 3rd of December, 11 days before the meeting, Venezuela conducted a referendum, an ominous referendum, asking the public whether they agreed. If this wasn't so serious, it would be laughable. Asking the public if they agreed, and I quote, with the creation of the Guyana Essequibo state, and that an accelerated and comprehensive plan be developed for the present and future population of that territory. Well, how do you think the referendum went? The Venezuelan government said that they got 10 million votes in support of the referendum, which shows their skill at mobilizing people. But what was the effect that Venezuela now claimed? This is all before Argyle. Venezuela now claimed that because of the results of that referendum, it has the authority to implement certain measures. And based on that referendum, they created something called the Guyana Essequibo state. So Venezuela, out of thin air, have converted 5 of Guyana's regions, region 1, 2, 7, 8, and 9, as a state. And they even appointed a head of that state, a temporary or provisional administrator over the territory. So on the 5th, this state was declared. On the 3rd, the referendum was held. So you can see, stage by stage, they are creating the conditions for Argyle. Argyle was well planned. It wasn't well planned in St. Vincent. It was planned in Caracas. That is the long and short of the story. Stage by stage, everything fitted into that Caracas plan, that plan that was hatched in Miraflores, the presidential palace. So we now have a situation in which Venezuela assumes or presumes to have the authority to construct a naval base, to construct landing strips, helicopter pads on the border with Guyana. And unfortunately, I don't think Guyana understood the guile of Venezuela in luring us into this ambush, in luring us into this trap. Because Venezuela has continued its aggressive actions before, during, and after Argyle. It is determined to continue its its efforts to annex Guyana's territory. It has even promulgated something called the Organic Law for the defense of Guyana Essequibo. That happened on the 3rd of April, 2024. All of this, the whole basket of measures, the whole menu of measures, all the menu of measures were concocted before Argyles. And what we're seeing now is this conspiracy playing out. But Argyles was the centerpiece of the conspiracy. Argyles gave it the stamp of legitimacy. And that is one of the reasons I feel that the president of Brazil was advised not to show up, because he did not want to be part of that catastrophe. He sent somebody to represent him. But he tried. I think his foreign minister tried, when they saw the disaster, to try to repair the damage, but that has not appeared to be a possibility as yet. So, based on this I would call house of cards that Venezuela has constructed, they have now promulgated an organic law which will cement Guyana Essequibo as a state into Venezuela. And they're now building concrete structures to link the Venezuelan mainland to Ancoco. As you know, Ancoco is an island which they seized from Venezuela in 1966, the year of Guyana's independence. And since then, they've occupied it. So even the question of occupation of Ancoco did not come on the table of Argyle Airport. Nobody even said, well, are you going to get out of Ancoco and give Guyana its part of the island? Nothing. Nothing was said that will cause Venezuela to take a step back, to retrace its steps, and to behave in a more friendly manner. So, in a sense, Argyle failed to resolve the problems faced by Guyana and failed to prevent Venezuela from acting aggressively. What we see, therefore, my friends, is, in my view, Argyle was a colossal catastrophe for Guyana. Guyana got nothing. It was a rich reward for Venezuela. Everybody left there boasting. The president was boasting that we did it. The vice president was boasting we forced Guyana to come to the table. And the minister of defense was boasting we'll never remove from the Atlantic facade. Now, we got nothing, but it was a rich reward for Venezuela. I see danger in drifting too far away from the established United Nations ICJ process. I see danger in using St. Vincent, or in allowing St. Vincent and the Grenadines to pose as an honest broker. I see danger in not seeking to remove the injurious decrees which Venezuela has burdened our relationship with over the last 58 years. I see danger of not seeking to take those decrees or to demand the repudiation of those decrees. In my view, my friends, I feel that Argyle damaged Guyana's diplomacy. In fact, the encounter was worse than useless. It was dangerous. Guyana has now to repair the damage done at Argyle. It needs to restore confidence in the United Nations ICJ process. It needs to resist the trap of face-to-face meetings. And this was a trap that Venezuela was setting all along. Venezuela does not want to put this so-called controversy in the hands or on the desk of the court. or the United Nations. Because we've had the good officers process for decades and it never worked. Venezuela feels they could win this war of verbal attrition. They could continue talking, and eventually wear Guyana down till some stupid person would say, hey, let's give Venezuela what they want and get them off of our backs. Let us accept the Hugo Chavez, building for rehabilitation. Let's accept a sports hall. Let us accept a Petro-Caribe deal. And by accepting these gifts, they eventually wear us down and believe that Venezuela is not serious about land. And Venezuela is serious about the maritime spaces. It's serious about the territorial claim. We once had the president here, Carlos Andres Perez, who came into this country, actually trying to bribe the government of Guyana, wrong president at that time, actually trying to, by saying, look, we'll have to pay for, the hydropower project in the Upper Mazuni. We'll do this, we'll give you money for that, as long as you give us the salida al Atlántico, the access to the Atlantic. So we are aware of decades of Venezuela, hypocrisy and Venezuela determination to claim this territory. And what we see now is that we have walked into a trap. We have walked into a trap at St. Vincent and the Grenadines at Argyle Airport, which has led for the first time to face-to-face meetings between the two presidents, which have got no chance of success unless, somebody, foolishly tries to agree to the Venezuelan proposals. Right now, we have started a new process. It has taken the process off well, it hasn't really taken it off, but it has created a new platform in Brasilia for Guyana and Venezuela to speak. Speak about what? How can they speak about a matter which was settled in 1899? How can they speak about an issue when Venezuela has got injurious decrees from 1968 to 2021, which Venezuela refuses to repudiate? What are they going to speak about when the Venezuelan government has given its armed forces the authority to enforce those injurious decrees against Guyana? So I believe that Argyle was a trap. It was a trap to restart a process of face-to-face meetings, and it's a trap to revisit the matter that was definitively settled 125 years ago. And in that regard, it was a failure, and we need to repair the damage caused by the encounter at Argyle Airport. Thank you. May God help us to get out of this quagmire that we are in now in terms of our relationship with Venezuela. May God bless you all.